Hi again, everybody. Welcome into another edition of the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast, episode 134. Overrated, underrated, our topic today, part 4. Thanks for joining us, making us a part of your day. New episodes every Monday at 9 a.m. Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube to watch the show and also to comment as well. The Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast page. We do have some comments from YouTube we're going to get to today. Overrated, underrated, part 4. Let me bring in professional evaluator, successful business owner, former coach, friend, and co-host, donning his, if you're not watching, his Milwaukee Brewers cap today, the organization that he works for, Mr. Jake Epstein. What's going
Yep.
on,
Well,
coach?
it's spring training hat time because it's spring
Well,
training.
they have the net in the back, though.
Yeah,
Or half the hat's the net. I don't think you have the net hat, I call
I
it. I don't know.
do. Yeah,
Oh, you do? Oh, you do?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So this is the sunburn
Very
hat
good.
for those of you that have shaved heads. You do not want to wear this hat
Mm-mm.
during spring training when you're out in the sun all day.
Right.
There's been some vicious burns out there. The poor guys got to put some sunblock underneath their hat, but it is very lightweight and comfortable.
Yeah, very stylish.
Yeah, it's nice.
Absorbs the sweat well too. The
It
old
does.
hats, the old hats, they would sweat and they would stink and it was disgusting.
So
Fucking
the
disgusting.
white lines would just keep creeping up the hat,
Yeah, that's
depending
right.
on how long the hat was, part of that player's season. Now it's a new hat every week.
Sal Frelick, his
Oh,
mustache, overrated, underrated. You see that thing?
his
He looks
mustache
great.
for Team
Playing for
Italy,
playing for Team
it's
Italy.
it's
He's
just
having a
perfect.
great he's having a great March. So
Yeah,
is Garrett
Matt.
Mitchell, by the way. Both of
Yeah,
those guys back-to-back first-round picks for the Brewers. Garrett Mitchell's hitting balls 800 feet the other way. He's a left-handed batter hitting it the other way. And then Sal Frelick's just hitting it all over the place in the world, or
yeah,
was in the World Baseball Classic. Italy has been eliminated. Frelick Mitchell,
yeah.
2024. That's what I say.
I don't know. Yeah, that's what
Brewers fans should be very excited
That's
by
what they're
what is
saying in
going on.
Milwaukee. Those fans would love to have those guys part of the everyday lineup and producing, not just part of the everyday lineup, but those
Yeah.
guys are coming along really well and kind of saw that early. Frelick's swing hasn't changed. He's still really fly. He's going to be just a high on base percentage guy. And, he may end up getting more into the ball, but he's not built for that. And there was somebody I noticed the other day that I'm glad I remembered this because we were talking about Torkelson, I believe, a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And I saw him randomly. My dad was over last night for dinner and we turned on, a spring training replay game. It was just kind of on in the background. Torkelson hit an opposite field home run and his swing was much flatter than it was in previous years. So I'm
Mhm.
wondering if he just kind of took this pitch that was outside and up and he stayed on top of it and he hit like a line drive home run to right field and it looked like he hardly swung, so I was checking the flags as the ball was going over. There was no wind either and I thought maybe it was blowing out and it was beautiful. So watch out, Spencer Torgerson looks like he's trying to make some kind of adjustment and it's showing up in games, and if that happens his consistency is going to go up greatly.
He's hitting everything hard too this spring.
Is he? That was the first
Everybody's
swing I
talking
seen him
about
take.
his exit. Yeah, everybody's talking about his exit velocity this spring and
Mm.
what he's doing with some of the advanced metrics and everything else.
Oh,
And
well, maybe
so,
that's what it is. I just saw
well, you're
one
right though.
swing
His
and said, "Wow, that looks different in a good way." So I'm glad that he's doing well after making maybe a small adjustment.
Hey, by the way, we did a mechanical breakdown on Spencer Torkelson. Mechanical Breakdown series is one of our first ones back in
Yeah.
2020 after he was drafted #1 overall out of Arizona State. So go back in the archives, check that out. It's on YouTube as well. Who else have we done? We've done pretty much everybody, it feels like at this point, right? Have we done Machado? We've done Machado.
I don't know if we've done. I'd love to do Machado though. He's one of my favorite
I'll have to
swings I
check.
use.
I don't, you
I
know what?
use
You're right.
for.
I don't know if
We did
we
Trey
did.
Turner, who hit a
We've
home
done
run
Trey
that
Turner.
put the
Derek Jeter's next
U.S.
week, episode
Yep.
135. That'll be a gold edition. That'll be a lot of
Mhm.
fun. Now, Derek Jeter, overrated, underrated. I'm not going to get into that today because I think there's a real gray area there. In a lot of ways, he was underrated in many ways, but in a couple of other ways, though, he was a little bit overrated. We'll get to that next week, though. Trey Turner, you mentioned, though, hit that home run
Yeah.
on Saturday night in the World Baseball Classic. We can do an overrated, underrated, and whether or not the World Baseball Classic is overrated or underrated. I thought it was overrated when it first started years ago,
Yeah.
and I thought coming into this year, I said I wouldn't watch it if it was played in my backyard,
Yeah.
but I'm gotta tell you, I've tuned in. I'm starting to buy into the hype, and if baseball did something correct here, I'm talking about the people who put together the World Baseball
Yeah.
Classic, not Major League Baseball. They scheduled it at a perfect time. They used up the perfect month, perfect scheduling real estate to get people interested. People, their interest very high in baseball right now for spring training, right? And again, people have talked about, well, maybe what if they played this after the World Series in
Mhm.
November? Nobody would care. They probably wouldn't get 500,000 viewers because everybody's
Mhm.
infatuated with college football and the NFL, the NBA starting, the NHL, of course, a little bit to an extent. So this is a perfect time to have the World Baseball Classic. I'm got to tell you, I thought it was overrated at first. I think now, though, with how this tournament has turned out and the results and the passion from these players, it's a lot of fun. I think it's underrated. I do have a theory as to why, and I want to just hear what you if you think it's overrated or underrated or not. But I do have a theory I'll get to in a second why I think players enjoy it a lot more.
I think I'm with you. I used to think it was underrated. I'm sorry. I used to think it was overrated when it first
Yeah.
started, but the last year or so, maybe two, you start to see the passion of the other countries that you normally don't see. And the fact that you have, a huge Latin American influence in Miami. They're playing, Venezuela, Dominican, Puerto Rico. They're playing it in Miami. You have these fans. It's almost like a soccer match. It's almost like a World Cup match energy to these games, which I think baseball needs. And
Hmm.
even the US team they're having fun. I mean, somebody wrote, I think this was Trey Turner's biggest hit of his career. I'm not sure I would go with that. He does have a World Series, if I'm not mistaken, with the
Well, he
Nationals,
was
right?
celebrating like it was one of his biggest
He
hits of
was
his career.
celebrating, but that's just the energy that it's.
Right.
You're right. Like I'm not gonna say it came out of nowhere, but it is really fun. And then I believe I read something that did Japan play? Was it Korea? Who did Japan play? And there were like it was like 60% of the households in Japan watched the game.
I think it was 62 million people.
Oh, was it 60? Yeah, it was an
Yeah.
insane amount. It was like larger than the World Series games
That right. I saw the same thing you did. 59
worldwide.
million. The most the
Yeah,
World Series has ever gotten is 59 million viewers.
yeah.
Japan got 62
Crazy.
million
Yeah.
viewers.
Yeah, it's just it's awesome is all I'm saying. It's great for the game. It's great for the players. I mean, I watch guys, and they're turning hard. Who was it the other day? Did they have an inside the park home run? And I'm like, don't blow out a hamstring,
That was
and
Lindor. It was
it was
Lindor.
Lindor, yeah, during the
Yeah.
Mets. That's the last thing the Mets needed was Lindor to
Right.
blow a hammy trying to go from and he turned it on. You watch a guy, you don't see somebody in spring training hitting the bases that hard.
Yeah.
You wouldn't see that. But it's bringing out guys' passion to play for their country and to play with probably guys they grew up with. And there's brothers. I mean, it's so sad what happened to Diaz, but he's playing with his brother on the same national team. It's really cool. I think Diaz's knee was going to blow out anyway. If it's blowing out, jumping around, it was going to blow out at some point in the next
Good point. Yeah.
the next couple weeks
Point.
doing conditioning or lifting or whatever. So that is what it is. But yeah, no, I would say that it's almost underrated at this point, the World Baseball Classic.
My theory with players, why they enjoy this so much. We're hearing more and more interviews of people asking the media, asking players, "Hey, do you enjoy? Would you rather win a World Series or would you rather win the World Baseball Classic?" And a lot of players are down the middle. My theory to this, and I've said this a couple of years ago, actually, on this show after the 2021 All Star Game. I noticed something very, very different in how the players play in that All-Star game. I'm noticing something very, very different with how they play and their energy that they bring with the World Baseball Classic.
Mm.
And my theory, and I'm not trying to dump on analytics here, but my theory is that there's less analytics, less game planning, and you're allowing the athletes to just be themselves. You're laughing, but you know it's true. I mean, listen, look at Mark, look at the United States manager, Mark Jim Florentine DeRosa. You think he's going by all these game plans? He's letting these guys play. Right? I mean, think about it. He's allowing these players and their talents to take over, and that's exactly what's happening. And I think that whether the players know it or not, it's infusing a lot of energy into these games, and it's making them really fun to watch.
Jim, you're a sharp guy, and that
I
may be
know.
one of the smartest things you've ever said.
I don't know
Really,
about
no,
that.
I'm serious. I haven't thought about that one.
I
iota.
said it 2 years ago, though, the All-Star game when it was in Colorado. I'm watching these players in
Yeah,
Colorado 2 years ago, flying around, play
yeah,
and the athleticism is off the charts, and then a week later, they're back to normal regular season play, and everybody's just stiff and taking
yeah.
pitches down the middle and doing all that fun stuff.
I don't know, Jim. That
I
might
don't
be a good
know.
tweet you throw out there. Might get some traction.
You
That's
watched Trey Turner's home
pretty
run
good,
last night
right?
or Saturday night
Yeah,
on an 0-2 pitch.
yeah.
He got it right down the
He
middle,
did. Yeah, that's a
right
mistake.
down the middle, right? I think I'm just saying, I could be wrong, probably am. I think though that if that was a major league regular season game, because he was thinking so much, because there was so much data and so much game planning involved, he would have taken that pitch right down the middle for strike three. But he wasn't thinking about it.
Yeah,
He let his natural talent take over, and that thing traveled 500 feet.
yeah. Well, and it's
Just
fun.
saying.
You know,
I don't know. Could be
sometimes
wrong.
information clogs the receptors, right, in the brain and
Mhm.
the adrenaline, and you start thinking instead of enjoying. And I do think that's what you're talking about in the All-Star game. And they got guys doing interviews in the middle of pit between pitches, but it's a fun atmosphere. And I feel like the World Baseball Classic is a fun atmosphere. It's not a tense, stressful playoff game, where you could cut the tension with it. It's like, you're right, guys are going out and having fun, and if they win, great. If they lose, they're with their buddies and they're having a good time and putting on a show for the fans. So yeah, it would be really interesting to dive in and see what kind of analytics are being used in the World Baseball Classic. That would be a really good case study.
Just tell I don't think though, I think we might be on different pages here. I don't think that there's stress involved with the well, I think there is stress involved, and I shouldn't say stress, tension involved with the World Baseball Classic, but guys aren't getting overloaded with all this information and they're just
Mhm.
going out and playing so they can handle that stress.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
I'm
No,
just
it's
saying.
they're doing it for their country. I don't know what kind of payout there is. I haven't read anything on that and how the pay works, if it's just a total revenue share based on all the TV,
Could be.
money that comes in, or if
Or
it's
it could be
nothing,
a
they don't make.
pool type. It could be if you win, you get to a certain pool, or if
Yeah.
you yeah, if you it'd be like golf. If you get if you're first place, you get a certain
Yeah.
share. I don't know, something
Yeah.
like that.
Interesting. Good work,
So
Jim.
I guess it's underrated, the World Baseball
Yeah,
Classic.
it's underrated. Still.
Still.
Yep.
Oh, you said something a couple of weeks ago. I got to ask you. We're doing overrated, underrated today, part 4. Get back to that in just a second. We have a couple of YouTube comments I want to get to here. Okay, I'll just get to this real quick one. Roger Ware on YouTube, on the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast YouTube page, he commented. We were talking about, again, the pitch clock for the 18th week in a row last week.
Mhm.
I made a promise to myself. This week we are not talking about the pitch clock. I
I'm
am not
done.
asking you if the pitch clock is overrated or underrated. Although I should ask you what your father thinks about that, but I promised myself I would not ask about the pitch clock.
And Big Mike, by the way, said he'd love to do a podcast one day, so we'll have to
Was
get
he
him
going
on
to
to do
fill?
so.
He's going to fill in for you one day.
Yeah,
All
maybe
right.
that's a good idea. Maybe we'll do that. I'm not going to be able to
Um,
fill it. I'm going to have to go set up the computer. I'm going to have to go do everything.
just tell him to come over to your house, set up the laptop or whatever
That's not a
set up
bad
the
idea.
camera, and bada bing, bada boom.
There you go. Good idea.
Very easy. I'm
Now he's
filled with
actually very computer literate. At 80 years old, he's still got it.
yeah. Okay, Roger Ware on
Yeah.
YouTube. About talking about about the pitch clock,
Mhm.
because this discussing the MLB pitch clock. It was a clip from last week. Easy fix, batters stay in the box. I agree, but with seasoned veterans, it's not that easy because they've been trained for so long a certain way. And I
Mhm.
understand that they have to adjust, and they will because they're the best in the world to do this. But it's not as easy as people think.
Yeah,
Um,
and there was even the rule in college where you had to have 1 foot in the box.
yeah, I hate
And
that.
yeah, and it's like, okay, well, you still have 1 foot out of the box, and then they're gonna do that 8-second deal where, oh, he's got a foot out of the box, he's not set, his eyes aren't on the pitcher,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. So I don't think anything works. I think we weren't gonna talk about it, but I think I think you have your 15 seconds, and I don't care what the batter does, right? I mean, I get it if the batter's out of the box, but I would say you have your 15 seconds, and the pitcher can pretty much throw anytime once it gets to whatever 7 seconds. He can throw a pitch. He can throw if the hitter's in the box or whatever. I don't know if there's a right way or wrong way, but the whole eyes need to be on the pitcher. I don't know about that. I think that's up to the hitter to decide whether or not he wants to hit or not.
All right, next week, I promise we are not talking about the pitch clock. We did it a little bit this week. Sorry. I
14
blame our listener comment there. I blame blame him. He was the
Mr.
one who
Ware
brought
brought
it
it
up.
up, right?
Yeah,
I like it.
we didn't bring it up.
Yeah. You know what we could do is we could put like a shock collar on them, and if like for an invisible fence for a
Yeah,
dog, and
not
if they
like
step,
or shot collar on us. Right.
or that would probably be better. If we start getting off topic, then we just
Yeah. Right. That's like that would be like our extra producer. Telling us instead of telling us in our ear, it's telling us on our neck.
That's
Get
right.
back.
Stay
I
on
was going to say
task.
something else about the hitters. Oh, I forget now. I can't remember. Oh, I want announcers. This isn't about hitters. I want the announcers to stop saying that's the first disengagement, or just go back to the regular way of saying, "Oh, he called time," and then if the disengagement comes into play, or if there's too many disengagements and it causes a ball or a strike, then you could say that. But just say
Yeah.
time asked for and granted by Phil Cuzzy, the best
Right.
home plate umpire, or
That's your
Angel.
boy.
Who's the worst home plate
I
umpire
saw
in Major?
something I haven't seen before yesterday. We have a softball tournament, right? And we're
Yeah.
playing a game, and the hitter actually she was a right-handed hitter. She put her left hand and called time to the pitcher. Yep. She didn't put her backhand back. She just went to the pitcher and said time.
Hey, hold up.
It was
It's
awesome.
backyard softball
She
right
was the
there.
smallest girl on the field and commanded the most respect with that one move.
Yeah, that's a very boss move.
Yeah, it was. It was impressive.
You're taught when you're younger to turn out of the way of a pitch instead of trying to catch it if it's coming
Yeah,
at you. If you're a kid and you catch, parents are gonna get mad at me here. If you catch that pitch that's coming at you and it's preventing it from hitting you, that's kind of boss too.
that is.
Just
Yeah,
throw it down. That's
broken
something like
finger too,
Serrano
but
would
that's
do
all
from
right.
Major League.
Yeah, it's happened before, right? I remember the
Um,
one, was it Matt Noakes or somebody got hit by
might be
Roger
before my
Clemens, and he caught it like in his armpit.
yeah.
I think it may have been Matt Noakes. Did they cross paths? And then Matt Noakes or whoever it was a left-handed hitter, took a couple steps to first base and then pulled it out of his armpit and fired it back as hard as he could at Clemens. And Clemens just caught it like it was nothing. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Not only did you like drill the guy, but then you made him look like he had a weak arm.
Well, this was in the 90s too. Now we're talking about hitters getting hit by pitches. Mike
Yep.
Matheny got hit in the face and he spit a bunch of teeth out, I think it was, and then he just
Oh.
ran down to first like it was nothing. The 90s was a different decade, man. There was a different breed back then.
Steroids running rampant.
He got hit. You know what?
Oh.
I'm gonna look it up right now. And I'm sorry for the pause here. First thing, by the way, it comes up on my YouTube, youtube.com. Trey
Yeah.
Turner's Grand Slam.
Yeah.
A video of it.
It was pretty
So
cool.
don't tell me
And he
that
was
the World Baseball Classic, I should be telling myself this. Don't tell me the World Baseball Classic isn't something that people are really enjoying and is a lot
Yeah.
of fun. They're
I'll
getting
tell you,
good
I had
television ratings too, by the way.
a good buddy of mine here in Colorado was at the games in Arizona, one of the US games in Arizona, and he had his sons there, and he's taking pictures. They had really good seats right behind the dugout kind of. He's taking pictures. It's like Trout and Betts and Ken Griffey Jr. And I mean, to see all of these guys playing in the same place, that's pretty cool for a fan.
Well, Ken Griffey Jr. hitting in the batting cage, the swing still looks the same, but
It does look
we talked about this on many episodes. So here's the video I'm watching, by the way, and you can't see it. I'm sorry, but yeah, the I'm going to try to describe it here. Matheny, right-handed batter, he's up, right? The fastball rides high and in, hits him at what looks to be right in the center of the face, but hits him in the mouth, and he just stands there with his hands on his hips. And he's playing for the Brewers. He literally starts walking across the plate and spits out a bunch of blood and teeth. So if you're interested, if you want to watch that video, I
That's a
suggest
big
go to
move.
YouTube and just search Mike Matheny hit in the face.
Dang.
Yeah. Ken Griffey Jr. was hitting in the batting cage, though. It's
Yeah.
amazing. It's amazing how his swing is the same. But then again, it's not really all that amazing because you talked about this before. Your swing from when you were in high
Yeah.
school to college to pro to even when you're retired really doesn't change. I guess guess the pillars of those of that swing and what makes you a really good hitter doesn't change all that much. You can make adjustments, but there are
Yeah, but
certain absolutes that you do that make you that great hitter, like Ken Griffey Jr.
yeah.
And the swing just looks the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's his style. He probably had that style when he was 12, his
Right.
elbow and his rhythm, and then it was ingrained in our minds watching him play, for all those years. And then he shows up with gray in his beard and, wiggles the same
Yeah.
way he used to, had his hat on backwards and, you know, weighs a little bit more now, but it was the same guy. I don't know. I remember my dad telling me that they were taking BP with the Senators, and I don't know what year it was, probably 69. And guys are hitting balls, and Williams, who's old at that time, my dad said he was probably in his, I mean, he was older, he was like in his late 50s, maybe, or at least 50s. And he's like, "This is how you do it, boys." And he got in there and hit some balls. And my dad's like, "It looked like Ted Williams, but it didn't sound like Ted Williams. Like when he hit the ball, there were just these weak, top spin line drives into right center field." And
Mhm.
my dad said at that point, he says, "Never take a swing for players younger than you. When you're teaching somebody and telling them what to do and you're old, do not swing for them because they will lose respect in you." So I
Yeah.
wonder what those balls looked like off the bat with Ken Griffey Jr. If
I don't know. They have it on video though, and all the players were gathered around the batting cage watching.
yeah,
That tells you something right there. Our other
yeah.
YouTube comment. This is from Randy Pohl on YouTube, the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast. He commented on last week's episode. Another great episode. I play
Thanks, man.
in the over 50 league in Colorado Springs.
Nice.
I am my own best coach, and my swing is much better than when I played at Doherty High School here in the Springs.
That's awesome.
So nobody really knows where Doherty High School is in Colorado Springs. But oh, okay. And he finishes off the
I do.
science of hitting. You do. Okay. Well, you're you're fucking Mr.
Colorado, I
Colorado.
mean, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. The science of hitting taught me. Is there still a minor league team in Colorado Springs?
Yeah, they moved the A team there. It's the Vibes now, I
The
believe.
Vibes. That's their
Very
name.
Colorado.
What a they're called the Vibes.
The Vibes.
That is such a millennial
No
woke
doubt about it.
fucking
And
name.
if you look up their mascot, it's like a
It's like the jumbo shrimp in Jacksonville.
it's like a toasted marshmallow. It's like a s'more guy holding a peace sign.
All right, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's not bad.
They
But I think
probably
it's
have a
A team.
lot of
The Brewers used to be there. The Brewers used to be at the Springs.
they probably have a lot of easy marketing theme and promotional nights.
They do. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
The science of hitting, this is from Randy. The
Mhm.
science of hitting taught me to hit in 1971. Well, that's
Okay.
good. I think maybe our podcast is making you, Randy, your own best coach. Thank you for the comment, though. Do
You bet.
appreciate that. Thanks for the listens and the comments, everybody.
Yep.
Email us your questions, JimboPodcast21 at,
Gmail.com.
or you can call us
I got
at
it.
Get out our
Jimbo
phone number.
Podcast 21 at Gmail. You can call that number.
No, you can't call that number.
Sure you can. We'll call you back. Send us a number.
Maybe you can like Microsoft Teams it or something.
Ooh. I used that
Or
for the first time the other day. I'm
you
not
like
a
it?
Microsoft guy, but I have
No.
an online academy.
You're a Chat GPT guy.
Yeah, that's me. No, I had one of my longtime students is in the online academy, lives down in Georgia, and so going through his high school, he's a really good high school player, freshman playing varsity, kind of going through that. And varsity baseball in Georgia's like Florida. They
Pretty good.
It's better than most states, and he's a 15-year-old kid, and there's 18 and 19-year-olds on his team, and sometimes we try to do a little bit too much to stress ourselves out. So we were going through, it was kind of like a Zoom meeting, but we used Microsoft Teams to kind of talk through some of his at bats, and it was great. It was really cool. So Microsoft Teams, yay, good job.
Yeah. Didn't you have another thing happen this week that tested you as an instructor?
It did.
It tested your entire it made you wonder about
No,
your
it did
entire
not
existence.
test my existence, but
Okay.
we could talk. I thought we had a underrated, overrated on that.
Did we?
Yeah. Well, it was on.
Oh, we did.
technology,
We did. All right, we'll
right?
get to that in a
So
second.
I'll
I'm
bring it
sorry.
up
Good.
then.
That's good
all
show
right.
planning.
I'll run the show, Jim. No problem.
I'm just gonna say you are running the show today. I need that collar would have come in handy. Zap me right
That's
there.
right.
I have to ask you something, by the way. You said you made a comment like, I don't know, 5 weeks ago or something. I don't remember how
Yeah.
many episodes ago. But you said something interesting that I never heard of before. And I want to ask you about it, and you need to expound on it. Is it expound? Do people say expound? Expand or expound?
Yeah.
Right. A combo swing plane. You mentioned that. You kind of slipped it in without much of which is fine, no big deal. Without
Right.
an explanation, though. And I've never heard it before, and I got very intrigued. So let's go over that. What is a combo swing plane? What's the definition of that? And what hitters that you can think of off the top of your head actually have that combo swing plane?
Well, a combo swing plane, there's two planes to the swing. And sometimes people talk about different planes and you don't really know which one you're talking about. So there's a plane that is correlated to the pitch trajectory as it relates to the ground. So the pitch dropping from the pitcher's hand to the catcher's mitt is on a plane of, say, negative 10 degrees, okay, coming
Mhm.
down. But then you also have a plane of your swing that goes around your body, right? I mean, we rotate and our hand path is somewhat circular or rotational. So our barrel path is circular, okay? It's not a straight line. You can't take a straight line and rotate. At some point, if you're a right-handed batter, your barrel moves to the left, or if you're a left-handed batter, it moves to the right. So you swing off of the plane if you're out in front. So making sure we line up both would be your combo swing plane. Making sure, you talk about the guys. I can't think of his name right now, but he's it's the farm whatever in Vegas, that guy, and he's the big scissor guy, right? Where he has these things and you
Ugh,
kind of slip
scissors.
as you hit, which is
Fucking
kind of, like that's what it is, what it is, right? That's his training tool. But the idea that he's preaching is good. His the idea of getting your barrel to make sure that it doesn't pull off, it doesn't over rotate, by making sure your body doesn't over rotate, is making sure you're staying on point. Your barrel is moving maybe towards the opposite field a little bit more, which I do a lot with my players. We do a lot of that. We don't, we're at a more stable base working on that, but the idea is the same. So making sure that we're both our direction, I guess that's the best way to put it, the direction of our barrel path, not pulling off, and then the barrel path not dropping underneath the pitch plane or going down too much through the pitch plane. We have to make sure that both of those are consistent. And if they are, then we maximize our barrels. We maximize not just being on plane, but not hitting off the end. I have a lot of players that their swing plane matches the pitch plane really well, but they always hit the ball off the end of the bat. They just, for some reason, their hands go to the pull side a little bit too quick, or they don't extend at the right time. And so matching those two guys up is really, really important for not only consistency in making contact, but then maximizing the exit velocity as well by hitting the barrel.
I gotta tell you, I'm speaking for myself here. Overrated, underrated, the scissors. Oh, completely overrated. Completely overrated. It's fucking.
I think it happens.
Of course, it happens naturally, though.
It's happened for
It's in
since
the
they've been
game.
playing the game. Um, forcing that move versus teaching the move.
It's not
Teach
an
their
absolute, that's for sure.
to each their own.
But
No,
the
because not
people who
everybody does
teach it,
it.
I'm speaking for myself. The people
Yeah.
who teach it, though, make it an absolute based off their science. But it's not
Yeah.
an absolute. It's not. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's why you're the best in the business, Jim.
I'm speaking for myself here. Jake is not speaking right now on this topic. I'm speaking for myself on the Lab Epstein Hitting podcast right now at this moment.
I love a little bit of everybody.
You love a little bit of everybody. I don't.
Yeah. I always find something that I can take. Doesn't mean I'll agree with everyone. It doesn't mean that I'll listen to everyone. And I will say there's usually something that makes me better that I can take away listening to other people. Even as, I mean, that the farm board is a very drastic, right? I mean, it's a very drastic move. Just like the what's his real name? Richard, teacher man. His move is a very drastic move, but there are parts
I
of those
can't.
drastic moves that I really like,
I
and
can't.
so maybe it works for their players. I have to kind of take
Hitting
pieces of it
hitting
'cause
instruction has turned into professional wrestling. We've got the farm board. That's like their little group, right? Right. What do
Yeah,
they
it
used
is
to
like
call that in
professional.
wrestling when you have like a group of wrestlers? They're like in one group, and
Yes, they
that's their
are.
group. And then you've got the teacher. What's his face? And that's
Yeah,
his moniker.
yeah.
It's really
Remember
something.
Mean Gene? No, Mean Gene had to be before your time.
No, I remember Mean Gene.
Mean Gene,
Yeah.
he was the
There was
guy,
one time where
the
who was it that was
interviewer,
yelling at
right?
him? One of the wrestlers was yelling at Mean Gene, and in his announcer voice, he goes, "Don't you yell at me!"
And Mean Gene had a mean mustache.
He did. Yeah,
Oh,
he was very
Sal
tan
Frelick.
too. Mean
Yeah.
Gene was in good shape. He could have easily become a wrestler. Who was it? Was it Andre the Giant that put his hands around his neck or something and choked him, or whatever?
Maybe. That's a big hand. If you want to see something interesting, my cousin sent me this. It was Andre the Giant holding like a beer can.
Hold on,
It
hold
would
on.
have it would have looked like we're holding not even the small soda cans anymore. It'd be like us holding one of those old things that used to hold film.
His hand size 16 inches. Andre the Giant.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
16
if he's
inches.
grabbing Mean Gene's neck, that's not good for Mean Gene.
Right.
Assuming
I
it
want to see.
wasn't
I want to
staged
see, and
because
I
it's
want to
real.
see. Never mind. Move on. I'm fucking
Overrated, underrated.
tired of these fucking
Do you
hitting
watch
people.
Ted Lasso at all? You watch
A little bit.
that? It just reminds me of one of the guys, Roy Kent. He doesn't like to blow the whistle, so he just yells "whistle, whistle" to get
Yeah.
people's attention. That's kind of like the shot caller idea.
Oh, a stance doctor, Steve too. He's got a nickname as well.
He does? Stance
Yeah,
doctor?
Dance Doctor Steve.
Yeah.
He'd be in the main event. This episode's really gotten off track.
Stance
Um,
Doctor Steve.
Dance Doctor Steve. Okay, overrated, underrated. Let's get to it. Here we go. We've done the World Baseball Classic. We've done Sal Frelick's mustache.
Mhm.
Very underrated. Ladies got to love that mustache. And by the way, Frelick, I didn't know that was an Italian name.
What about Sal?
Sal is very Italian. Yes, that is. I'm not. That's you're right.
He
You're
doesn't
right about
even need
that.
a last name. He really doesn't need a last
No,
name
it's
to
just
play
it
on
just could
the
be.
Italian
It could be
team.
like
No,
Ichiro.
just Sal.
Yeah. Just here comes Sal to the plate.
That's it.
All right. This week on cross functionality, we talked, Cassie and I, technology, gizmos and gadgets when it comes to
Mhm.
hitting.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to give you some technology here. I want to see what you think, if it's overrated or underrated. Here we go. I think I know the answer to this. Blast motion technology, overrated or underrated?
I don't know, Jim. These are really hard questions.
All right.
I'll
Diamond kinetic,
say
overrated, underrated?
it depends how you use it. So,
Right.
okay, blast motion for a parent and a kid,
For an
overrated.
instructor.
For
For
an
for an instructor.
instructor, the right instructor, it would be underrated.
All right.
Yeah,
What about diamond kinetics?
same. I just don't use
Okay.
it.
Okay. You don't use it?
I don't use Diamond Kinetics.
How come?
I don't know. I like Blast. Blast was easy to use. It's set up quick. I never had any issues with it. I
All right.
tried Diamond Kinetics, I think, back before it got rebranded, and it glitched out on me. Zep glitched out on me, so I just stopped using them. They weren't good
Also,
numbers.
I want to add context to this. This equipment is a lot,
Mhm.
and Cassie and I talked about this. It's a
Mhm.
lot of money, but we're taking the money out of it. If you had an unlimited budget to get all of this equipment, all these pieces of equipment to use, that's the context we're talking
Okay.
about when we say overrated, underrated. All right, here's a good one. Oculus virtual reality. I love the virtual reality.
Yeah.
Overrated, underrated?
Overrated.
Really?
Oh,
Okay, why?
yeah. I read a study on this that it really doesn't help with pitch tracking, 3 dimension, like the live, meaning it's not the same as watching an actual object of actual size coming at you.
Okay.
Now, in terms of timing and rhythm, I think it could be very, very beneficial. We've tried it. We use the heck out of it, and I think it's pretty cool, but everybody loses interest. So for that sense, I would say it's overrated because people didn't want to use it.
All
I
right.
thought it was a pretty good idea, but I couldn't get players to do it after a couple weeks.
All right. K-Vest. Overrated, underrated.
Probably all of that. Hmm.
There's no gray area here. This
Well,
is
no, I
like
mean, there's a lot of
overrated,
different
underrated.
there's K-Vest, any kind of 3D kinematic sequencing, right? Or not? We're not talking about because there's
Oh,
K-Vest, there's 4D motion, there's um, now you can do AI stuff with just video that shows kinematic sequencing. So are we grouping all kinematic sequencing kind of
well,
sensors
you
together?
just did, so I guess we are.
Yeah. So I would say for the most part, aside from what I'm going to talk about, overrated.
Really.
Yep,
But you mostly use K-Vest though.
I do. Yeah, but it doesn't matter which one. You're looking at the results.
And you think it's overrated because you have had an experience with a student that was using K-Vest that really didn't
Um,
connect, right?
I'm going to say it's overrated because if you're good, it doesn't matter. If you hit the ball really well, I don't really care what your K vest sequencing is.
Okay.
There are big leaguers that are in sequence, and there are big leaguers that are out of sequence. There are hitters that are big and strong and don't produce any bat speed, and then there's small people that produce a ton of bat speed. And when you make these changes, for instance, I've made a separation change between torque angles, right? So your upper body is closed more, your lower body is opened more. It's not a drastic, it's not going to make you, if you're hitting the ball 80 miles an hour and I increase your torque angle by 10 degrees or your separation angle or your X factor or your K angle, whatever you want to call it, three dimensionally, your exit velocity might go up 2 miles an hour. Okay. So we're not talking like from 80 to 82. We're not talking about massive gains when we see this.
Mhm.
However, I have a player that I'm working with now, and he's strong. He's pretty big. He's 175, 180 pounds. He can put up a little bit of weight, for being a sophomore in high school, put up some weight in the weight room. He's stronger than other people, other players that I work with, but he hits the ball 18 miles an hour less than some of them.
Mhm.
And he's like, what the heck, man? Like, I'm strong. I'm putting in the time. You look at his swing on video, it's a little bit of like Trout, where he's very kind of rotation dominated. He's not a lot of whippy like you would see with um, uh, Vlad or
Trey
even
Turner.
Trey Turner. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's more of like a turn swing. And he was taught that like by a guy, the last couple of years before I got to him. It's not a bad swing. But the barrel never releases. So I'm like, hey, I want to put the K vest on you. Okay. Which is going to tell us where you're missing out. Like where you're either not an athlete and your muscle fibers don't fire fast enough, right? Some people do. Some people are freaks and they jump higher and they run faster and they see pitches better and they can react earlier. So where's the disc? Is there a physical disconnect? So I put him on the K vest, and essentially his left arm and his torso move at the same speed. Okay. So he never stacks his kinematic sequencing from his shoulder rotation to his arms. He was never taught to use his arms or hands. Okay. So when you look at guys that are real whippy or handsy, like Hank Aaron, okay, Hank Aaron was like 165 pounds, 170 pounds, and he swung a big old bat and he just flipped that barrel out there all the time. And he centered it and it had speed. So why can a player that's stronger not do that? Well, he's not getting the energy to his bat head. So the K vest in that instance is telling me as an instructor where we can make gains. Okay. I will tell you how hard that is to make that gain. I've been doing this a really long time and I've studied a lot and I've worked with a lot of players. And I feel like I'm a pretty decent coach for communication and information. And this is going to be very difficult for me to get to. It really is. It's not going to be easy because I saw the disconnect without using the K vest. Like, okay, you need to, like, your arms and hands don't do anything. So how can we like get you to release the barrel? So we've been doing some directional stuff. We've been doing
Mhm.
trying to take his rotation out of it with his chest, but it's going to take us a long time. It's going to be a really cool case study over the summer. It's not something I can do during the high school season, unfortunately, since it's going to be a month, 3 to 4 month project. But it'll be really interesting if we can add 10% to his bat speed. If we can go from 80 to 88, that would be really, really cool. So we'll have to revisit this later in the summer and see if it can
Yeah.
happen because he's a pretty good athlete.
You know, we will revisit this, yes,
Yeah.
and everything you said there, as always, brilliant.
It's very complicated information that the K vest is telling you.
I
And
agree, and I wanna say this about the K vest, and this
yeah,
is why I think it's overrated, because
yeah,
everybody likes to on Twitter, the professional wrestling part of hitting on
yeah,
Twitter, right?
right. There are K vest people.
There are a lot of K vest people. I respect that, that's
Yeah.
fine, right? Maybe I'm just too inept to really understand what the K vest truly does. I'm more like you, a blast motion guy. I do like some virtual reality, but maybe that's just the kid in me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I just refuse to grow up. But at the same time with K-Vest, there's one thing that the K-Vest people, really the technology people in general, don't ever
Uh-huh.
mention, and you mentioned it in there. It's getting stronger. It's getting in the weight room.
Yeah.
It's doing exercises, whether that be bench press, squat, trap bar deadlift,
Hmm.
landmine press, which is actually better for your
Hmm.
shoulders if you're a baseball
Hmm.
player than the bench press. It's doing those types of exercises and trying to get as strong as you possibly can and gaining as much weight,
Hmm.
good weight as you possibly can. I follow this scout on Twitter, and he always makes that point about how if you want to gain weight, this is what you do. If
Yeah.
you want to get stronger, get in the weight room. Because that to me trumps all technology. I don't care
Hmm.
what your kinematic sequencing is when it comes to the K vest. If you're hitting the ball 400 feet, if you have the proper bat quickness, if you have the absolutes that we've talked about before, if you're
Hmm.
strong enough to hit the ball 400 feet, if you're strong enough to play at the next level, at the end of the day, the kinematic sequencing with K vest, no disrespect, it doesn't matter because
Yeah.
you've got the absolutes. And on top of the absolutes, you have the strength and you have the weight to play at the next level. You've got the body to play at the next level to where you're not going to get hurt and you're actually going to go out there and play games and you're
Yeah.
going to be a reliable player to play games on the field.
Yeah. It's hard because the K vest is, I mean, if you put a K vest on Trey Turner, you're like, okay, good job. But
Right.
everybody's, kinematic sequencing in baseball, it's not always 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Okay. And 1, 2, 3, 4 means the hips reach maximum speed first, then they start to decelerate, then the torso reaches maximum speed second, then it starts to decelerate, the arm reaches maximum speed third, and then the hand. Okay. So that's your sequence. But there are a ton of major leaguers that are 1, 3, 2, 4, meaning their hips reach maximum speed first. That has to be everybody, okay? Their hips reach maximum speed, but then their arm reaches maximum speed second, and then their torso is third, which is considered out of sequencing. And if you just took it into context, then you would cut that person, right?
Right.
If they put the K vest on a Dominican that was 14 years old and it wasn't 1, 2, 3, 4, and you didn't have the right people, you just went by the manual, you'd be like, oh, well, we're not going to sign this kid. And that's the furthest thing from the
Good
truth.
example here of this. And I want to bring this guy up, Jeremy Pena. You
Hmm.
think people are talking about what his KVest numbers are? You know the only thing they're talking about, or they have been talking about the last year or so with
Yeah, how
Jeremy
clutch
Pena
he
is how
is.
big he's gotten, how much
Oh,
stronger
he
he's
is
gotten.
big. Yeah.
Yeah. He's one of the biggest shortstops physically in
Yeah.
all. We're talking about Derek Jeter next week. Derek
Yeah.
Jeter,
Right.
comparatively, physically was a rail. He was
Yeah.
skinny compared to
Yeah.
Jeremy Pena.
Right.
Now Jeter was, as it
A
stands now, a
winner.
better player than Jeremy Pena. I'm not
Yeah.
comparing the two as players because it's not fair to do. Jeremy Pena is very early in his career.
Yeah.
But what are people not talking about? His blast motion, his K vest. I love blast motion, but
Yeah.
it's true. Nobody's talking about his metrics. They're talking about how much stronger he's gotten, how much
Yeah.
bigger he's gotten, how reliable he is, his
Hmm.
absolutes at the plate. That's all people talk about with Jeremy Pena.
Yeah. Performance. And
Yeah.
can technology help with performance? Can the K vest? So I did the K vest at Texas Tech with Texas Tech
Hmm.
softball, right? And it just tells me where are deficiencies. Okay. And then we can work on those deficiencies. Now, usually I can see those deficiencies on video just because I used KVS side by side with video for so long that I can kind of see, okay, that's going to look at this and so on and so forth. So we used it with those players. There was one girl we strapped on I opened up the box for KVS. She was a transfer student, transfer player from a West Coast national powerhouse school. Okay. I'll just leave it at that. And she's like, oh God, I hate that thing. And I was like, wow, you've used the K vest before? And she said, we used it like every day in practice. And because I wasn't in sequence, it was just like they were just hammering me. You got to do this, you got to do this. And it just got in my head that I couldn't react to pitches anymore because I was thinking about my body parts all the time. So sometimes you overdo something that can be a good thing,
Yeah.
and that's a bummer. And this girl can hit, but she was out of sequence, and I saw that, and I said, okay, well, try some of these drills and these drills on the side to help with that number versus strap this thing on every day and make sure you're doing this. So you have to be
Yeah, no
careful.
kidding.
Every athlete's different too.
All right.
Some people don't respond to technology, and some people do.
Overrated, underrated. Wrapping it up here. Got a couple of more, and we'll get to them really quick. Your batting stance, how you set up. Overrated, underrated. I think it's overrated, but
It's overrated.
yeah.
Has to be comfortable. I don't care what it is.
All right. A couple of statistical overrated, underrated opportunities here. RBI, overrated, underrated. RBIs, not RBI. Don't say RBI. He has 18 RBI. Fucking assholes.
But it's always runs.
Runs batted in.
Not runs batted ins.
It's not. It's the S in RBIs is attached to the runs. The R.
Oh,
in
it is.
RBI.
Okay, well then it's okay.
It's not 18 run batted in. If people say that, I'm telling you right now, you sound like a fucking idiot.
You're off the
Don't say that.
All right.
I'm not talking to you, but
What were we talking about? RBI?
yeah, weighted runs created plus, overrated, underrated.
RBIs. I love RBIs.
I asked
RBIs are
a
underrated.
one. I asked a different one because you ruined it because you
Okay.
said RBI.
All right.
All right, is it overrated, underrated? Go ahead.
Underrated.
All right.
They're still important.
Weighted runs created. Some people say it's overrated, but they're also the same.
I know
people
they
that say
do.
RBI.
I know they do. I don't think
weighted runs created plus, overrated, underrated.
I'll go with overrated. It seems to be a little bit big. It's too much. It's talked about too much, but I do think it's important.
Weighted runs created to me is overrated. Weighted runs created plus is slightly.
What is plus? Is that based on that's with the stadium and the
yes,
weather and the wind?
Extra, yes.
And, okay.
Extraneous factors, we'll call them.
Yeah.
Involved in that statistic.
Yes.
All right, final one here. Overrated, underrated.
I have more.
What's that?
I have a couple more we're going to talk about.
Okay.
Because obviously you missed it when you were making your notes.
I did?
Whistle.
Hitting against a firm front side. Overrated, underrated.
Oh.
A-Rod didn't hit against a firm front side, mind you.
Yeah, he did.
No, he did not.
Sure he did.
Not always.
Look at contact.
Not. Okay, go ahead. Overrated, underrated. I'm going to look at contact. Go ahead. Overrated, underrated.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's everyone wants you to hit with a firm front side, so I'll say that it's overrated, but the majority of the time that front leg's got to come back because that accelerates your hip. Your front hip snaps back and around. Not your back hip, but your front hip will rotate back and around.
All right, he's not exactly completely firm.
He always bent it after. I will say that. It was always very bent after. I'm going to say it's an absolute though. The front knee has to be straight. And hold on, not at contact, by the way. So it's usually in the power V, in the extension position. So maybe, if it's normal video, say 60 to 120 frames per second, it's usually 1 to 2 frames after they make contact with the bat. That front leg usually straightens out. So I would call that an absolute. I don't know if it's overrated or underrated, but It's
Well,
important.
okay, but the title of the show is over it. So is
But
it? Oh, I don't, that's great that it's an absolute, but is it
so
overrated or underrated? That's the question. That's the main
are we
question of
talking
today's
about
show.
at contact or during the swing? If it's at
Okay,
contact, totally overrated. It should not be straight at contact. Overrated. If it has to straighten through contact, underrated. Has to straighten after contact.
you Jake down the middle.
And I'll
Jake
be
down the
running
middle.
for the mayor of Denver. In
Jake down the middle.
that's,
Yeah,
I would like to talk about.
yeah. What were the
Do
other
you have
ones
any
we could do?
more
I'm done.
technology? Because
That's it. I'm
like
done.
hit tracks, and Rapsodo. I think those are technologies that are I do believe they're underrated for the
Hmm.
most part because it can tell us so much about the batted ball is the key. So the reason I don't care about blast is because I don't really care how fast the barrel is moving. So many people are like, "Oh, I swing the bat so hard," but if you never hit the barrel, if you never hit the sweet spot, if your barrel's not on playing with the pitch or combo plane action, then it
Combo
doesn't
swing plane.
matter. Like, what is the end result? What is the ball doing? I'm a huge proponent in what the ball is doing. What direction is it going? Pull side opposite. What is the trajectory of that? How high or how low are we hitting it? And the clusters, if we take 60 swings today and we take 60 swings tomorrow and we end up taking 300 swings this week, when you hit the ball to this part of the field on these pitches, what is your ball flight typically?
Mm,
Are you hitting it too high there? Are you
yeah.
hitting it too low to the pull side? Like, that information to me is so very important. And then with the Rapsodo, the spin is so crucially important. When I hit a ball to right field, what is the spin direction? What is the spin rate? When I hit it to the pull side, is it hooking, or can I get a little more backspin on that? I think those numbers are really crucially important. And I'll tell you why. When I was in, oh, well, this isn't the only reason why, but I went from Cal State Fullerton to Butte, Montana to play pro ball, right? A week after the draft or 5 days after the draft. And I played, this was in 2000, right? So I played with a metal bat, a much more potent metal bat than today's baby core, but not as crazy as it got about 5 years later, but still a metal bat where I didn't really have to use my hands much. I was a big guy. I just kind of rotated and I found a barrel and I would hit home runs. Well, I get to pro ball and I'm taking BP, and usually I hit a lot of balls over the fence in BP, and I'm hitting the fence like in BP. I'm hitting the ball off the top of the wall. I'm hitting the warning track. I'm like, what are these balls bad? Is the wood, am I swinging crappy wood? Whatever. Both of those were probably the case, but still. So my Venezuelan, we probably have talked about this, but I'll never forget Monzi. Okay, I don't remember his first name, but Monzon was his last name, and he was Venezuelan, and he
Sounds
spoke
Italian.
hardly any English. And he got me to pretty much do a drill where I didn't use my legs at all, and I just kind of used my forearms and wrists. I
Hmm.
was just kind of doing I call it the loose hands drill, right? It's part of my program now. And I did that, and he would do it every day before I would step into the turtle to take BP on the field, right? We would hit into a net behind home plate. I would do it kind of rapid fire, and it just made me feel barrel release, like using my hands. And then all of a sudden I started to match that up with my stride. So I'd stride, my foot would hit the ground, and then I would just think about that hand action that he was teaching me. And the ball started going 30 to 40 feet further. 30 to 40 feet, maybe even more than that. What the heck? Like, how did that happen? I didn't get any stronger.
Hmm.
I wasn't rotating faster. I wasn't using my legs more. I was using the weakest muscles in my body
Hmm.
to release the bat head, my fingers, wrists, and forearms. And what it essentially was doing was all the energy I was building through my kinematic sequence of rotating my hips and my shoulders, my arm, I was finally releasing that energy at the right time. I don't think my bat speed was much harder, but the ball flight was different and the spin was different. I was getting backspin more instead of hook spin or side spin to the pull side. And all of a sudden I started to hit easier home runs. If I were to have that and used a metal bat in college, I may have actually made some money, coming out of the draft until they figured out I couldn't play defense. But that's a different story altogether. So I don't know where we
That
got to
people
that.
used to run into that a lot with metal bats. The metal
Ton
bats
of it. Yeah, in
The
the
metal
90s,
bats, they gave
2000s.
you this illusion because
Mhm.
the sweet spot was so big that I don't wanna say, I don't want to
Yeah,
misspeak.
guys were hitting 30
Maybe
home
you're
runs,
stronger
20.
than what you were, and you're doing it wrong, right? The
Yeah,
metal bat was allowing you to use you to your point, the weaker muscles in your body to hit the ball a long way,
yeah.
and
Or vice versa. Like, in
right,
my case, all I had to do was turn and just kinda turn to the ball and catch it. But, yeah, there were a lot of guys, well, with linear hitting, right? There were
right,
a lot of guys that didn't rotate much. They were just kind of finding a barrel. So, yeah, but getting back to the technology, that's why the ball flight, the Rapsodo, and they're expensive.
yeah.
The TrackMan is 28 grand or something. 30 grand. The Hit Tracks is 20 grand. The Rapsodo's least expensive of the bunch, but they really do give you good information.
Alrighty, well, good stuff today. Overrated, underrated, part quattro.
Very good. That was a good one. That was good. Underrated, overrated,
We'll do
overrated.
another one later on, sometime down the line. Next week, Mechanical Breakdown Series, a Gold Edition. We're doing Derek Jeter, breaking down the
Mhm.
swing of a legend in that of Derek
Yes,
Jeter. Looking
it's
forward to
cool.
that.
His will make so much sense. Like,
Yeah,
we all know Derek Jeter, and he was big and tall and hit everything to right field. But why did he hit it to right field? That's what we're going to cover.
that'd be a lot of fun. All right,
Yep.
be sure to subscribe, Apple, Google, Spotify. Leave a review. Email us, dreamboatpodcast21@gmail.com. Follow us on social media, at Jim Tara, at Epstein Hitting. And what did I forget? YouTube, the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast YouTube page.
Come find us. Get
Zing.
better.
Yeah. All right. We will talk to you next week, everybody. Take care. Have a great